Radical Love Live is a member of the Choircast Network. This is Radical Love Live, an ongoing series of conversations with thought leaders exploring faith outside the boxes, hosted by Mark Dilcomb and Kelly Wilson.
Hey, Kelly.
Hey, Mark, how are you?
I'm freaking awesome, as always.
Awesome. So great to hear.
Indeed. How are you, my friend?
I'm good. Really good.
That's good. So we're cut to the chase on this one, because if anybody listened to last week's episode, we had our awesome guest drop in a couple of minutes early on our conversation we were having with Keith Giles.
Yep.
And so we have the incredible, incomparable Tim Whitaker, not
That's right.
Gallagher, Whitaker. There's a joke there from the previous episode of the new evangelicals. And Tim, it is so good to have you with us. And I think we're in for a lively conversation. As Tim, I think you said as we were recording earlier, we better buckle our seats, right?
Yeah, I said, if you think Keith is negative, buckle up.
No. So,
He was
welcome,
great,
my
by the way.
friend.
Huge
This is
fan
the
of
first
Keith.
time that we've had you on the show, and we're so grateful to have you, Tim. So,
Hey, thanks for inviting me. I know this was like I think I got an email yesterday, like, hey, we have an opening. You want to hop on? I'm like, heck yeah, I do. I'll make it happen. So thank you for the invite. I really appreciate it. It means a lot.
When it's so funny. I follow your Instagram, so I feel like we have conversations every day. I see.
do
telling me
you?
about all this stuff?
This is how you feel through Instagram with Tim? Like,
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I feel like we're in conversation all the time. I comment every once in a while, but it's nice to have an actual.
All right.
I wish we were local. I would come into your beautiful studio. We could talk in person for hours.
Yeah.
Any chance to do things embodied or not behind a digital screen, I try and do. As I'm sure you feel the same way.
We do.
Yeah.
And that's why we do. That's why Kelly and I do this together in person, because it makes a difference. Well, Tim, you're not that far down the road from us. So anytime you come up to New York area, come and see us.
Are you in the city?
We are actually recording from Garfield, New Jersey. So even easier. Just come up the turnpike or the parkway.
Yeah, you're like an hour and a half away from me. I didn't know you were in.
Yeah.
Why didn't I know you were on the East Coast? I mean, I don't know.
Well, so, for full disclosure for our awesome listeners, we met Tim for the first time at the God After Deconstruction event in February at Drew University.
Yes.
And we sat on a panel together about the influence of podcasters in this space. And so, that's how we got to meet. But I don't think we ever really had an opportunity to say, hey, so Tim, what are you really doing? Or, that, because we're on the panel and there was a lot of other stuff that was going on.
Yes.
So, yeah. So we're right up the road.
Yeah,
Very
Mark,
cool.
in New York. I lived in New York until just a couple of years ago, and then we moved out here to the suburbs. So
He's now a suburban guy.
Congratulations.
He's driving a
Bergen
Subaru
County, that's
station
right.
wagon, living in Bergen County,
Yeah,
shopping at Whole Foods.
Oh
looking
my
big about-
goodness.
Yeah, I know. He's totally sold out. He's not a city kid.
Jeez.
Right. On all night, like Stop and Shop in Inglewood, where they play like the best hits of the 70s like night. Got it.
All right. Well, so enough levity, guys.
All right.
We sound like we're having too much fun. Now we need to get serious.
Yes. Yeah. And the word on everybody's lips these days is Christian nationalism. We actually just came off a conversation talking about it, but it's all the buzz, and it feels like, or seems like, it's really ramped up in the last few years. And Tim, I know that that's something that you talk about a lot. Can you sort of give us just a little like baseline of the status of Christian nationalism at the moment?
Sure. I could definitely give you a snapshot. Let me just preface to your audience, I am not an academic. I'm not a scholar. A lot of what I'm saying is sourced from actual academics, folks like Andrew Whitehead, Bradley Onishi, Anthea Butler, many others as well, who have done amazing work in this field, Samuel Perry, Robert Jones, PRI Institute. So I want to just preface that I'm just the messenger, really. I'm not the person at the source of a lot of this stuff. Do you want to know like a snapshot of what Christian nationalism is? Or are you looking for how it stands, how we got here? Like what angle? Because it's a pretty big topic and there's different ways to approach it.
Well, I think we've got a pretty good kind of baseline definition of it. I think it's what's kind of unique about this moment, because we saw the fuse lit all the way, like back in the 80s with Ralph Reed and the moral majority and all that, and sort of have seen it growing, but it seems like right now at this moment, there's so much talk about Christian nationalism. There's Project 2025. There's, Trump is running again. So I
Yeah.
guess it's kind of like a temperature check on like what's the hottest thing going on with Christian nationalism right now.
Yeah, well, I mean, you're right. There's been a movement of this kind of ideology happening for 4 decades now, right? Moral majority, Jerry Falwell, etc., Ralph Reed with the Christian Coalition. And what we're witnessing is the fruit of many years of planting seeds, watering those seeds, all behind the scenes. Unless you grew up a white evangelical. If you grew up like I did, you were maybe even unwillingly or unwittingly knowing about this stuff, right? Like you were just in a world that sang songs like "I'm in the Lord's army," right? It was kind of in the air that you breathe. What we're witnessing today, yeah, exactly. What we're witnessing today is the fruit that is finally coming to bear from the deep roots of Christian nationalism. We're also seeing a push in a farther right direction from evangelicals than we maybe have ever seen in at least our lifetime, I could say. I was born in '88. So, think about for example, think about abortion, right? We've seen a real shift from, hey, we have to overturn Roe v. Wade. And, obviously we can make exceptions for abortion when it's necessary for incest and the R word and life of the mother. And now you have this movement called the abolitionist movement, which is the name is intentional. They see themselves as, ironically, in the early tradition of the abolitionists, which is just ironic for so many reasons. But now those are people advocating for, no. We have to actually get rid of not only every kind of abortion, we have to get rid of contraceptives. Joel Webbin, who's a very far-right Christian nationalist, has said on the record, on his Twitter, that we should be going through CVS stores and taking birth control off of the shelves and dumping it down the drain. No more human sacrifice. That's his exact wording. And these people would also advocate for punishing women who get abortions and punishing those doctors, right? So we've actually seen a shift into a more radical idea that did have some roots in like the early theonomist movement, someone named R.J. Rushdoony kind of picking up on this stuff from the 60s to the 80s. So what we're seeing is really, I think things are coming to a boiling point. And I think Christian nationalists, broadly speaking, are more open to utilizing any tool necessary to take power and control back and to rule from the top down over society in terms of culture, politics, education, the 7 Mountain Mandate that I'm sure you've talked about before. So I think that's where we're at. There's a lot of ways that those people are trying to do it via Project 2025, Agenda 47, the new GOP platform, etc.
Agenda 47 sounds like the worst 90s band ever.
That's Trump's agenda on his website, which, has a lot of overlap to Project 2025. Yeah, it sounds like a bad youth group name. We're Agenda 47 because Matthew 47 or some Bible verse.
Right. I actually want to jump ahead in the question, because this is something that personally has been bugging me about the, all movements toward Christian theocracy in the United States, is that there's a huge overlap between people who believe that America should be a Christian nation and we should have Christian leaders and Christian laws and we need to stop, we need to prohibit people from doing things, but also that the world is going to end any minute now. Like Jesus is, we're building even a runway for him and he's coming back. Like, what point? Like, I know from a corporate standpoint and from a political standpoint, for years it's been obvious, like we're putting wedge issues out there to gain voters, and then we're going to turn around and do all these things like taking away corporate regulations, and we'll give you the gift of of making abortion illegal. But in reality, it's supporting corporate interest. But for your average everyday Christian, who's like, what's the end game, or like what's the point of being the Christian rulers of everything when ultimately you're
going to be raptured and you're going away anyway.
Right. Or the tribulation's coming and then we'll all go off to heaven. I just don't get the logic of it. And maybe there isn't logic to it.
Yeah, evangelicalism is definitely full of paradoxes and contradictions. And I think this, to a degree, can be one of them, because there are, and this depends on someone's eschatology, right? Theologically, how do you understand the end of the world? up until John Nelson Darby came around with his theology, most of the take was, hey, the reign of God will happen on earth, and we wanted to prepare the way of God by making the world a better place, and that will usher in the reign of God. That's where you get even a lot of like early Wesleyan tradition, a lot of the social justice movement kind of has that theology with the end of the world, right? And then that kind of shifts where this belief comes into place of, hey, maybe things get worse and worse, and they get so bad that eventually God comes back, and that war and famine and death and despair are all a sign of the times, the end times. And that's when you have this huge explosion, right? In like the 70s and 80s of literature from people like Russia is the seven-headed dragon talked about in the book of Revelation, and the Cold War is a sign that God's coming back soon, right? And you get people like Harold
Hal
Camping.
Lindsey and
Yeah, Hal Lindsey and Harold Camping, who predicts the end of the world over and over again. And so it's interesting because the average evangelical, even the average Christian nationalist, doesn't really know where they're drawing some of their end times theology from. They're just kind of swept up in the waters of whatever is happening, right? And regardless of how they think the world will end, the rapture coming or things getting worse and worse, they believe that they have an obligation to preserve America to be that beacon of God's chosen nation when everything goes down the shitter, frankly, right? So, yeah, maybe we're not here, but we have an obligation to do everything we can until then to make America a godly and Christian country. And to rule from the top down, almost as kind of like maybe we could say role playing as being part of the kingdom of God, ruling over the nations as their theology would tell them.
Okay, that helps synthesize it a little bit, and I have heard some theologies that are about that by being a godly nation, we're continuing to establish our protection and success.
Yep.
I can remember back around like 9/11, there were that was Pat Robertson and Jerry Falwell came out and they were like, this is because of all these ungodly things that we've
That's
done
right.
that God has lifted his protection. So people are like, if we're not a godly nation, then people are going to attack us and we're not going to be prosperous anymore.
Right. Can we just, let's tease that out. That's actually a very important point. This is part of the mythology that Christian nationalism uses and the theological language that Christian nationalism uses to paint this reality that sometime back then in American history, we were a godly nation, right? Where we were doing the will of God and getting blessings, but since then we've lost it. But I've never heard a Christian nationalist actually tell me what year and what actions the country, like, was it when we were enslaving people? Was it during Jim Crow? Was it when the SBC was the Southern Baptist Convention was splintering off from the Baptist Convention because they had a right to own slaves? Was it when the Tulsa Race Massacre happened? Like, what is the actual set of years or decades where we were a Christian country doing the will of God and experiencing prosperity because of that? And what do we have to do to get back there? A lot of this employs quite literally propaganda, right, to get its claims across. And this propaganda needs to be examined because once you examine it, the whole thing falls apart. Right? Right. But it's effective for evangelicals in particular because the evangelical mind has been shaped by decades to hold absurd claims as literal. Like, for example, a talking serpent or a talking snake. I was taught this my entire life that, hey, Genesis 1 and 2 is essentially the video footage of how the earth was formed. And yes, this serpent or the snake, they would tell me, actually spoke because that's how the world worked back then. Somehow I had this, I was taught early to suspend rationality and logic and maybe looking beyond the story of the Genesis to see the metaphor behind, and just taught to accept this, that back then things were enchanted and magical and now they're not anymore, right? So there's a lot going into the evangelical psyche that primes the brain to accept statements like that without actually critically examining them.
Thank you for that, because you're exactly, I was going to say, this notion of Christian nationalism is based on suspending any kind of rational thought, and or even greater than that, if you are a practicing Christian, I would like to think that people would actually explore their faith and ask these kinds of questions beyond what is given to them and told to them. But unfortunately, we live in a culture where, because of that existential threat that if you don't listen to us, then you're doomed to eternity of hell and all this icky stuff, we glom onto it, but we don't ever really question, what is good theology? What makes sense to us? What was that happened in Genesis, other than what happens inside a Bible study and then there's some kind of weird rationalization that usually takes place around that. And so my point is, I look at Christian nationalists, and I don't want to lump them in one group, but I don't know how they can be really literate and intelligent about their faith or the theologies that go to the Christian tradition. Like, they just don't give a rat's ass about that. Like, it's just what they know, and it's very primal and fear-based and power.
One of the maybe best ways I can sum that up is
Yeah.
there is a framework, a theological framework that operates inside of Christian nationalism.
Okay.
That framework, though, uses language of biblical worldview, right? We are standing on the principles or the moral foundation of God's word. It's deceptive because what they're actually doing is they're actually being very selective in how they interpret very specific passages in the Bible, but they're calling it a biblical worldview, right?
Mm.
So, for example, Christian nationalists are not going to highlight James 5, which is a really intense condemnation of business owners who exploit their workers for unfair wages. I mean, it sounds Marxist, frankly, right? Like, whoa, power dynamics here. I mean, and the critique is, the author of James says, it's like you're fattening yourselves up like cattle going to the day of slaughter for doing this. Like, God will judge you harsh. There's a reason why most people who grew up in church like me never heard of that passage before, ever. But there also is a reason why we all know the passages about, why God created them male and female, and why marriage is between one man and one woman because of Genesis 2, and because of Matthew 7, I think it is, when Jesus reaffirms quote unquote marriage, because they actually have proof texted 5 or 6, maybe 10 verses that actually outline their entire understanding of the Bible, and then they claim to be biblical. So there's a lot of charades happening.
Yeah.
There's a lot of misleading statements happening, but there is an inner logic to it. Unfortunately, that logic is built on false pretenses, an abysmal understanding of what the Bible is and isn't, and also taking verses out of their context and using them as like a hammer, frankly.
So true, Tim. So true. So there's a mutual beloved friend of ours, Thomas J. Ord. I was reading. We love Tom. We all know him. So it popped up on Religious News Service just today that he's being hauled in front of the Church of Nazarene there in Lenexa to determine his fate.
Yeah, they're having an actual heresy trial.
Yeah.
I know.
Like, I hope, is Goody Proctor gonna come and testify?
I know, right? It's crazy. So, I was reading, I read the article, right? And it's fine. The article wasn't the issue I have. It was the comments. I dared go into the comments section, and knowing, the basis of this is going to be with folks that I'm probably not going to agree with. But it's amazing how conflation and no context will, like, you'll take one part of a text, something out of one element of a text, the scripture, and then tie it directly to another element to patch together why Tom is wrong.
That's right.
And I was like, no, that's not how this works.
Right.
You just can't take things, that's like flipping through an encyclopedia and just taking things and just jamming it together, and you create your framework for why Tom is wrong and why he should be, thrown out of his denomination. So
this is why those same people are not going to talk about all the examples of polygamy in the Bible. They're not going to talk about Genesis 4 or when God, speaking on behalf of the prophet Nathan, tells David, "Was me not giving you Saul's wives enough?" I mean, God himself, themselves saying, "I gave you this person's wives," plural, right? We don't highlight that. Why? And because people will say, well, that's not a proper hermeneutic, right? So then this word comes into play, hermeneutic, which is essentially means how we interpret the Bible, right? And it's interesting because who determines proper hermeneutic? The text does not say in Genesis 4 when Lamech takes 2 wives, and you, reader, reading this is not for you to ever do. Do not take multiple wives. It's unbiblical. No, you have to assume that's sinful, even though the text makes no such claim. In fact, throughout the Hebrew Bible, taking multiple wives, or really the language is woman. There is no word husband or wife in the Hebrew or the Greek. It's always just woman or man. Taking multiple women is not condemned. It's normative. It's just part of how the world worked back then. Right. But again, that doesn't suit the needs or the point of what Christian nationalists and really conservative evangelicals need the Bible to do, which is to serve their purpose, to serve their interests, to maintain society in a certain hierarchical order where essentially white families who are nuclear, one man, one woman with their kids, are the ideal, and everyone else beneath them who doesn't assimilate into that is weird, is perverted, is gross, and does not deserve the same equity to the legal rights that those people get.
I think it's a great encapsulation right there. You just said it, right? This is what this boils down to. Yeah.
Yeah, reminds me of a conversation I had with someone not long ago. We were talking about the sacredness of babies and children, and I was like, if you wanted to go through the Bible and pull out proof texts along the way, you could create a religion that said that God really doesn't like children at all.
Totally.
Go through, like from the the bears mauling the kids, teasing the prophet to and I brought up Psalm 137:9, which is it's somebody like on the field of battle and they're all tired, and they say, "Happy is the one who seizes your infants and dashes them against the rocks." And I brought this up, and the person that I was talking to again brought up the hermeneutics, like, well, you got to put it in context. This is somebody who was at war, and they were just wishing for this.
They didn't really want to bash the baby on the rock.
Kind of like, well, I appreciate that we finally are at a point where we're using historical and cultural context to interpret our sure, but why aren't we applying that to everything else this way?
Exactly. And the reason is because one way of interpreting the Bible serves those people's self-interest. Like we can't miss this. It's so important. There's a reason why the same people who will tell you the Bible is literal in terms of Genesis 1 and 2 will then try and explain away the very direct command from Jesus that it's harder for a rich man to enter the kingdom than it is for a camel to go through the eye of the needle. Why is one interpreted literally when we have science that obviously disproves that? The other is a pretty clear statement that's not very metaphorical, besides the eye of the camel idea, right? But like the point is that it's really hard for rich people to enter the kingdom, and that gets explained away. Oh, it's about the heart. Why are there no laws from evangelicals pushing for fairer tax laws or for the wealthy paying their fair share? After all, for the sake of those rich people, it's better that they aren't rich to enter the kingdom. But why don't we think about it like that? Because it doesn't serve the interest of capitalism. It doesn't serve the interest of white evangelicals, right? What serves the interest of white evangelicals is maintaining the status quo. So once you start seeing things through that lens of who does this interpretation benefit? It's no wonder why we're still trying to fight for racial equity in the country or for queer rights, because the Bible is used as a weapon of oppression based on who holds the power of interpretation. And that's why it's so key to dismantle all of that.
So true. So Tim, here we are. We're talking in July 24. We are 4 months away from elections. Christian nationalism is all a part of this. What do you think is going to happen? And I am asking you to look into your crystal ball and whether or not this one wins or not. What's in store for us?
Am I allowed to be really honest with that?
Yes.
I might have upset I might have upset some people, but I need to say
go wild, my friend. You have full reign. Go.
I am
your warning in the
I am ticked that the DNC has given us Joe Biden. Sorry. Like what I'm not saying, first off, I work for a nonprofit. So this is just my personal opinion. I'm speaking on my personal opinion here, not for the sake of the nonprofit. This is just my thoughts. Obviously, I know that people who are going to vote for Joe are going to vote for Joe for good reasons, because democracy is truly at stake. The fact that it is this close when the RNC is running a convicted felon who's been found liable of raping a woman, who brags about grabbing women, who said he would date his own daughter, who has FBI classified documents all over the freaking place, who packed the Supreme Court that gave him criminal immunity. The fact that it's close and the DNC has given us Joe Biden, who, I'm sorry, cannot speak. And that's not a stuttering thing. This is not an ableist claim, okay? I stutter when I talk too fast. I understand that. Go watch Joe Biden 2020 debate Trump, and then go watch the last debate. It's night and day, okay? And the reason why I'm mad is because there's too much at stake in this election to actually have a MAGA Agenda 47 Project 2025 presidency. There's just too much at stake. So I'm pretty ticked. Now, I don't have a solution. There are powers way beyond me that aren't going to change things, and so we have to work with what we got. I get that, But my gosh, I mean, I do wonder, this is me really being like very truthful with you. I
Mhm.
do wonder, you know, growing up on talk radio, I heard a lot about the progressive elites, these secularist elites who just hate the Bible and hate the religion of people like me. I do wonder if there is a hint of truth to that, because I do wonder if the progressive secular people in the DNC obviously had no freaking clue what was boiling underneath the surface for the past 10 years and really don't understand what's happening with Christian nationalism. I don't know if they understand the religious fundamentalism that has been brewing inside of America for 40 years. I don't know if people recognize in those spaces that the MAGA cult is motivated by the belief that God has given them the right to take over society. I don't know if
Mhm.
they understand that because they're looking down their
Yeah.
nose at these people. And that's my hypothesis.
And
I
that
have no data, but
and
I
that
just wonder.
and that the Constitution is subservient to an interpretation of the Bible.
1,000%.
Yeah.
Doug Wilson wants to he's a massive player in this space. If you don't know who he is. On record, I know this because I've interviewed him before, wants to put Christ is Lord in our Constitution before he dies. Think about that for a second. These people are
Oh,
absolutely for real. Doug Wilson was platformed by Tucker Carlson on X a couple months ago, seen in
Mhm.
front of millions of people. These are not small fish. And even if they are radical, let's say that data-wise, these views are fringe. People don't understand that Christian nationalism does not care about being fringe. They care about getting into power. Why do you
Yes.
think they're embracing authoritarian ideals? Why do you think they pack the Supreme Court? They don't care about democratic principles. They don't care if it's popular. They have one mission: take power, rule over America at all costs. I know it sounds hyperbolic. Come with me to a Turning Point USA event. Hear what they're saying. It's all right there in front of us. They say it blatantly. This is not some secret thing. It's right there.
Right. We look at it and say, "Oh, Donald Trump is really using those people," but I think they look at it as like,
No,
we're using
using
Donald
him.
Trump.
It's a symbiotic using, right? They're using each
He's
other.
our battering ram to get this thing up.
That's true. Okay, so you're absolutely right. So you said that, Tim. You're right. It is symbiotic because for Trump, what does he get out of it? He gets all of his own wealth and pieces of that work for him. Of course, there's an even unchained immunity, basically.
Right. And he gets all the glory.
He gets
and
all of
all
it.
that.
He gets the
Look,
power, gets the fame. Guys, I literally don't think I'm lying when I tell you it's a cult. Here's a book. It's called Christ Trump.
Oh,
Okay.
my.
This is a
There you
book
are.
that is about how Donald Trump would act like how if Jesus was still alive past his 30s. He is a new Messiah figure. That's what this book is called. That's what this is about. It's called Christ Trump, Persecution of a Man. You want me to read you a little excerpt? You want to hear this?
Sure,
real?
Go for it.
Yeah.
I'll try to.
I
My,
always try and bring receipts so people know I'm not exaggerating when I talk about this shit. This is a real quote from the book, page 7. The author's talking about Trump. Here's what he says. Without giving any thought to his own welfare or his own wealth amassed on earth, in fact, putting both in direct line and jeopardy from these evil hordes of globalists, child butchers, communist zombies, fascist sadists, flunkies in the deeply ill deep state, one man displays the capabilities of a Christ avatar, perhaps somewhat alien to our conception and canon, but, dare I say, nuanced and foretold by illusion. Behold, the Christ Trump, an ordinary man filled with inspired depth of insight and imbued with the sensibility and strength to do what is good for all peoples. He has risen to the task at hand to break the conquered people from the sick, corrupt ideologies of the abject tyranny foisted upon them and now. Consider for a moment how perfectly normal it is that the model of the elder Christ comes to purpose and perfect the world that the young Christ made born again with the giving of his own blood. There you go.
oh my God.
Wow. Do you think the DNC knows about that? No.
To your point.
Sam,
No, yeah,
go ahead.
Well, I just think that progressives in general are really out of touch with what, particularly the coastal elites.
The coastal elites, yeah.
I remember,
liberals.
I grew up in Indiana and then moved to New York. And, I remember in college talking with people about politics and whatever. And I was amazed. I was like, you people have absolutely no idea what's happening on the ground back in South Bend. I
Right.
mean, you just don't.
Right.
Like, you have no idea how far away from you politically, emotionally, educationally, religiously the rest of the country is, and like clicking along like, oh yeah, then we're going to pass universal health care. Like,
So no, but Tim, you have absolutely applied the truth to this, because I do agree. And part of it, I guess, I'm guilty as being part of one of those liberal elites who thinks in that kind of mindset that we know how this is going to work, and we really didn't see what is actually happening. The reality is how motivated, they have a deep conviction to make this happen, and somehow, the liberal thought is, oh, this can't happen. We're more erudite for that. That we know better, and look down our nose at the folks that are doing exactly that, to the point of what Kelly, you just said, what people in South Bend are thinking, what they're actually doing. And there's definitely a rise to power taking place. And I'm not hopeful, actually, that of November. I mean, even with the Biden issue, and even if he just goes away, which, it seems to be picking up momentum today by chance. But I don't know if it's not too late that we'll see Trump in office, unless there's something bizarre happening between now and November.
Look, I don't like making people feel uncomfortable. I'm sure some are like, ooh, I don't like talking about the progressives being negative towards them. I understand all that. I really do. And for the record, I'm sure all three of us are quite progressive in our views. We're pro-choice and obviously pro-queer rights and affirmation. I mean, all of the yeses to that. And this is not about some moderate third way. Okay, this is not like a side A, side B conversation. What I'm saying is that we have to be able to be honest, and I'm not gonna ignore reality like what MAGA does and create their own world of delusion. I'm not gonna do it, even if it is frustrating to call out the problems that I'm seeing on the only other side that's a viable option in America right now, right? And so, yeah, I mean, I'm with you on that. I don't know what's gonna happen in this election cycle. It's very close. I will tell you that as of some recent polling, I live in New Jersey. You guys are in New Jersey. Trump is up by 1 or 2 percentage points in New Jersey, and that's a big freaking deal. Now, now that is
crazy.
Listen, there's a margin for error there for sure. I think New Jersey will still go blue, but the fact that it's that close in New Jersey, if that is not a DEFCON 10 alarm bell, like, guys, you might lose New Jersey. The state hasn't swung red in what, like 2 or 3 decades? Like, it's a consistent blue state. Trump is up in the polls. Arguably, something is wrong. And so, while yes, I absolutely am terrified of Project 2025, I'm absolutely mad at the white evangelical system that has given us this over decades of building these networks behind the scenes. I am furious as well at the DNC, who has had their eyes shut and their hands over their ears, saying, no, those dumb religious people, they're never going to get any power. No, just ignore them. Don't take them seriously. It's like, you know what? Not that you reap what you sow, but like, shame on you. Shame on you for like having that, like, kind of snubbing your thumb at people and not taking them seriously, because that does build resentment for any group of people, not just for people who are conservative Christians,
That's why I say I confess fully to it. I am one of those, I like, oh, you're dumb. Like, you don't get it. You just, you're living and wallowing in your own Christian national thought, and, will take power. And it's just wrong to think that way, because if I even believe what I come out of my own mouth, that we're to love all unconditionally, as Christ teaches us, I should not feel this way about my neighbor.
Well, this is why for us as an organization, we're so committed to non-dehumanization, because ultimately, what's the problem underneath all of us? It's dehumanizing, right? When Trump calls immigrants poison, that's dehumanizing. When we hear people call the left demons, dehumanizing. In my mind, the second we get in that kind of mud and start othering the others, what do you think is going to happen? Right? Of course, it's only going to fuel the cycle of chaos more and more. And also, the other thing is, and I'm very, exactly. And I tend to be, I'm not sure how you both are, I'm very pragmatic. I tend to think, how do we actually get the change that we want done? I will tell you, as someone who grew up a conservative white evangelical and was very conservative talk radio my whole life, I was not changed by being called an asshole bigot on the internet. Like, it never worked. My mind was changed when friends held space for me, when people I didn't understand were extra kind, and I met my experience with them didn't match up of what I was told would happen from my church, right? And so I like Dr. Roberto Espinoza talks about this. I like the idea of, instead of trying to destroy supremacy, we compost supremacy. How do we compost supremacy? and make it fertile soil to build new and better ways forward. My hope, ultimately, even though I think it's unlikely, is that Charlie Kirk repents and goes the other way, right? My hope is that these people
for that.
turn. And what we're going to do, we're not going to kill them, obviously. They're on the planet. We exist together. We have to make it work. And so the more that we can, and this, I want to acknowledge as a white man, there's still a ton of privilege I have going, even saying these words. This is not for everyone to do. I totally acknowledge that, My thing, my shtick, so to speak, my calling is that I do have the privilege to go to a Turning Point USA event. And some of those folks will sit down with me over a beer, over dinner, and I can have a rational conversation saying, but don't we agree like universal healthcare could be a great idea because medical debt is trash? And they go, I think there's a really good position for that. Okay, that's progress. Like, can we just agree there? That's one more step forward, right? And then once that equity is built, then I can text them when they post something super homophobic and be like, bro, what the heck? Like, you met me. You know that the people I represent and talk to are not like this. What are you doing? That's much more compelling to have a conversation as opposed to no relationship. You're a bigoted asshole. And they go, well, fuck you. I'm going to do it even more now. Right. So that's kind of been my approach behind the scenes to hopefully try and turn the tide that way.
I
Well said, Tim.
I remember the end of the Obama era. And, and I'm sure that the Obama era in general was really alarming for a lot of people who then reacted afterward. But I remember reading an article toward the end where there had been a tremendous economic comeback in the cities, but not in rural areas. And the New York Times was interviewing Obama, and he was like, I don't understand why the economic recovery hasn't gotten out to the heartland. Right. But the fact, kind of the unfortunate fact that happened, that the economic benefit didn't reach the heartland. And he was also kind of publicly would talk about like, those people are hanging on to their religion and guns, created this huge distance between the, so-called liberal elites, which I think is funny because, am I a liberal elite?
Right.
Paying my gas bill, I don't feel like that.
Right. Side, yours truly, the liberal elite.
Right.
Side.
But what I'm saying, the economics also help fuel some of what's going on. Because I've heard people just talk about like, I want those Trump bucks again. Like I felt like I was economically better off when Trump was in office.
Well, there's that.
Who cares about all the other?
Right. Right.
There's a million different ways that people have priorities that lead them into voting for him versus something else. But I'm going to go back to something that, Tim, that you brought up, and it's so true. There has to be a reconciliation amongst us who are, whatever the word that works for us, that are like-minded in this sense of that, okay, we do read, we think about, God, I don't want to say this and sound like an asshole. This is why this is really a hard struggle. But, we do contemplate about, what our experience is, both politically and our faith and, how we interact as a society and what impact takes place to the culture. My point all to say is this elitism that has manifested, is present, and how we other people that we don't think are as educated or as enlightened as what we are. Mm-hmm. And we've othered them, to Tim's point about the resentment, and that we're not getting anywhere out of this. We totally misunderstand this, and we're doing what they would do to us. Like, so there's not a win in any of that.
And we're talking past each other.
Yeah, we're talking totally past one another.
Right.
And so nothing will change. It will only progressively get worse.
Yes.
Right? Because let's say that this is absolutely the goal is to bring theocracy, Christian theocracy into the United States government, all the way top down, right? That cannot be a good thing.
Right. That's right.
How are there ways that you approach conversations with people who are, so to speak, across the aisle that our listeners might be able to take into account?
Well, the context really matters, right? So part of the thing is that take Joel Webben or Charlie Kirk or Doug Wilson, right? Those folks politically, culturally must be resisted. Like there's no negotiating on a cultural level with, Charlie
No.
Kirk, given what he wants to do, right? There
Right.
has to be legal things that we're advocating for that enshrine the rights of all of our neighbors into law. So people like Charlie and Doug and Joel can't mess with them, right? So I want to be very clear about that, right? This isn't
Yeah, yeah.
like, oh, let's find the common ground legally. Like, no, there can't be because of what they want. Their common ground is a full takeover. Sorry. And it's no compromise, right? That's the ethos here.
Right.
So, it depends on who I'm talking to. If I'm talking to someone like that, it's a very different conversation. Now, I have talked to a few people who kind of have that level of power and are that vitriolic in person, and it did not go super great. I mean, just, kind of frustrating, and their worldview is so different and so based on a faulty understanding of the Bible. Honestly, it's arguing with the fundamentalists, and a fundamentalist of any sort is committed to dogma over good faith dialogue, right? They have their talking points and that's it.
Yeah.
That's different though from like family members or from friends or even people at these events who are just like lay level attendees. One time I sat down with a girl, I was at America Fest. I was at the hotel lobby bar. Girl comes, sits down next to me. She says, "Oh, I don't have a charger. Do you have like a charging cord?" I don't think I did. So she went to the gift shop and got one, came back down. We started talking. I'm like, perfect. This is why I'm here, right? I want to know, like, why is she here? Who is she? Talking, like, we have a great conversation. She says why she's here. She wasn't that far MAGA. She's like, yeah, I have some concerns about the whole MAGA thing, but I really appreciate this and that about these perspectives. Okay. We agree on things like universal health care. Her dad's a small business owner. My parents are a small business owner. We align a lot, right? And we have a really good conversation. And through that, I'm able to kind of ask questions like, well, what do you think about student loan forgiveness or the country or about Donald Trump, grabbing women as someone who's a woman who I'm talking to, right? So I just try and find that common ground. And then for family and friends, that's up to everyone. Some people can't talk to their family at all about this. Some people can engage in good faith. Me and my parents, we get along great. They're wonderful grandparents to our kids. We don't talk about this stuff at all. Like we just kind of have an unspoken rule of, you know what? No reason to let politics ruin our relationship. They're only going to be here for so long. That's how we choose to navigate it. But everyone's different.
Well said.
Yeah, when I go home for family, it becomes kind of a sport. I mean, it always ends with like, ultimately we're looking for the same things, and we, believe in God and in our own ways, But it's a little bit of like Archie and Meathead a little bit.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, so Tim, in the few minutes we have left here, let's talk about what you do with the new evangelicals. Like,
Yes, yeah.
You do a lot of good work in
A
there.
happier topic.
Yeah, well, it is because you're doing yes, just share the amazing work. Tell our listeners what you're up to.
Oh, well, that's super kind. Yeah, we're a nonprofit organization. We do three things. We hold space for folks who have been marginalized by the evangelical church. We advocate for accountability inside of evangelical spaces, and we help people explore the Christian tradition beyond what I call is the basement of evangelical fundamentalism. So the idea is like, hey, you grew up like me? Great. There's a whole world above ground that we can explore together. So we do that as a digital first organization. We have a community side. People can make a free account, get to our website. They can sign up for our members map. This is all free. Everything we do is paywall free. And they can see who's in their area and they can DM them. We do a lot of content on TikTok, Instagram, podcasts, YouTube, all the stuff. So, especially right now in this current cultural and political moment, we really feel like we have an obligation to do everything we can to really expose Christian nationalism, tell people what's going on, use our networks and our reach to educate people on why we're so concerned. It has nothing to do with the fact that it has nothing to do with the fact that Christians exist and want rights. We want all of our neighbors to have equal rights. The problem is that Christian nationalism wants their rights privileged over everyone else's, right? That's the issue. Right. So that's kind of what we do in a snapshot.
Yeah. Great work you're doing. And you started this when?
I launched the New Evangelicals in my attic on Instagram as just a social media account with like 2,000 followers in December of 2020.
And here you are 4 years later, and
it's been wild.
It's gotten a little bigger than that, hasn't it?
A little bit. I really, I don't have any nonprofit experience. I don't even have a bachelor's degree in anything. And when I started TNE, it really was just me and a camera saying, hey, here's what I'm concerned about. Here's what I'm thinking about. Anyone else out there? Then I discovered the term deconstruction. I kind of discovered the whole evangelical thing. And it just kind of grew very quickly, especially as Christian nationalism came to light. So yeah, it's been a very wild ride very quickly.
And I am so grateful for you. You're an inspiration to me, and I think you should be for the work that I do as well. In that, this feels like this is the work of Christ. I'm not saying that somebody else's work isn't the work of Christ. I'm simply saying that we are following in the footsteps of Christ when we do the work that we do. He too did not have degrees. He wasn't there to build institutions. He was meeting people where they are, creating them spaces, allowing them to experience the divine and see their own innate divinity that is bestowed into them that as they are meant to be. And that all of this, everything that we've been talking to up to this moment that does the separation and the marginalization and just the dehumanizing and all of that, just is absolutely fundamentally not necessary. There is a completely different way to do this. If we walked in the path of Christ's teachings, this would be a much better and different experience that we have in the human condition. That's for damn sure.
I agree.
I'm going to mention one other thing too that I just love what you're doing there is and how it was framed in that podcast panel that we were on when we were asked the question by Trent Fuller that do we consider ourselves spiritual communities? And I'm sure you said yes to that answer. Yeah.
I don't know what I said.
Yeah.
Maybe.
So, yeah. So what do you, how do you see yourself in your space with new evangelicals?
I don't know. It's so weird being even the term digital community. Like we have a private Facebook group. There's about 8,400 people inside of it.
Yeah.
And they're all so different. Some have deconverted completely. Some are still very Christian. Some are atheists. We certainly hold space for spiritual people, but we also, as an organization, are very much Christian, right? But we're not the kind that's like you have to assimilate into these views in order to be here. So I think that like the community kind of sets the tone and pace, and that could change. If there's another influx of people and they're more agnostic, maybe that will change the tone of the Facebook group. I don't know. But as far as an organization, we very much are like a Jesus-centered and inclusive org. That's kind of how we frame it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know if I would say we are a spiritual community.
You just are. You're just a community.
Yeah.
So where can people find your work? I know that I follow you on Instagram, but I know that you've got some podcasts and other.
Well, yeah, I mean the phrase "the new evangelicals" at this point, if you Google it, anything that comes up is pretty much us. We are on podcasts, we are on TikTok, we are on Instagram, Facebook, website, thenewevangelicals.org, YouTube. I mean, we're pretty much on any social media or digital platform. We have a footprint there somewhere.
And we're going to see you again, my friend, coming up in October.
That's going to be great.
October 17th through 19th in Denver at Theology Beer Can.
Yes.
I'm so excited.
I am too. I
mean, Flamey Grant, Kevin Max, it's going to be such a good time.
And
we're going to be in Denver, Colorado.
Yep.
Hell yeah.
Awesome.
And there's loads of drinks and food and snacks and even non-alcoholic options.
Absolutely. For you, for sober folks like me. Absolutely. Yeah. So if you're interested in joining us, I'm assuming that tickets are still available for people.
They are.
Okay.
On Eventbrite.
There you go. Check it out. Google, just search in Eventbrite, the words, I guess it would just be beer theology camp.
Yeah. Theology beer.
It's theologybeer.camp is the website.
Oh, there you go. Thank you.
Yeah. And also we'll put this in the show notes.
Yeah, exactly.
Wait. Do you guys have a promo code to give people?
We do. Ours is Radical Hobbit.
There you go.
And you'll get a discount on tickets.
Thank you for $50 off your ticket.
There you go. Thank you, Tim.
Got you covered.
All right, my friend. Listen, thank you very much for joining us. We must do this again. It is great to have you on the show, and the fact that you're close by, we need to do it in real life.
Oh, I would easily, I would make that trip, no problem. Just let me know.
Let's make it happen. Sounds good. All right, thank you for joining us and sharing your insights, and we'll talk soon.
See ya.
Blessings to you, Tim. See ya.
I gotta stop recording. Good job, guys. Yeah.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Radical Love Live, hosted by Mark Delcom and Kelly Wilson. Recorded at the Bravery Studios in Garfield, New Jersey. All rights reserved. Find our episodes on Spotify, Apple, and YouTube. And check us out at radicallovelive.com, along with our personal websites at markdilcom.com and kellywilson.com. This is Radical Love Live, where we explore faith outside the boxes.